Welcome to another episode of Bourbon and Rum. This is a podcast of two brothers from opposite ends of the spectrum. My name's Kent. I'm a rum drinker, and I'm from the left side of the aisle.
And I'm Kyle. I like bourbon, tend to be a little more conservative. Join us as we explore this experiment. Can two brothers from different sides of the political spectrum have a civil conversation and celebrate our differences?
What are you drinking?
Well, I am drinking an Elijah Craig Barrel Proof, contributed by my crazy neighbor next door, gave me a bottle here. Oh, he came over and was drinking it. He left it, so I'm drinking it. 129 proof. It is, I like Elijah Craig anyways. You know, it's a Heaven Hill distillery product. It's just a really spicy kind of vanilla bean, rich flavor to it. It's one of the best high proof bourbons I think I've had. It's really good. Wow.
Sounds really good.
What you got? What are you drinking?
I've had it before on here. It's called Quackenbush rum.
Oh.
And it's by the Albany Distilling Company in Albany, New York, and a Christmas gift from family who live in Albany. So
nice.
Kind of a nice thing. And I still had some of that bottle left. And for the longest, I would get our bottle and over the next couple of weeks kind of work through that bottle and be ready for another. But my bottle acquisition has exceeded my bottle consumption for the last month or two. And so I've got like a bunch of bottles of rum with like 2/5 of the volume left in them. So I need to close some deals out here.
Well, you know, I've been collecting for a little bit, so that's my shelf over there. But I was telling you, I've been getting into custom GPTs lately, and I created a custom GPT for bourbon hunting. And one of the things I did is I loaded up my collection into the thing, and I took pictures of the bottles, and then it can kind of tell you how much you have. So it estimated, and then I used the proof of all the whiskey and all the liquid that I had available, and it estimated how much pure ethanol I've got. Apparently on my shelf, I have like 15 liters of pure ethanol, which, you know, don't ask me why I wanted to figure this out, how many lethal doses that would afford. So, you know, I could take out 43 people here, apparently in my.
And they'd have fun on the way out. It would be a great party for the first half hour.
Exactly. Well, you know, that could even be a jumping off point. I thought it was, we had some texting the other day as the stock market volatility and Trump tariffs are going crazy. And one of the things you'd mentioned was your thought that, you know, we don't need more manufacturing jobs, that what we need is have everybody doing AI jobs. And I think what we kind of wanted to get into today, like you said, trying to tackle all of tariffs at once, probably that could turn into a 5-hour podcast, but we were thinking about kind of.
And it would be ugly and mouthy out of me too. So we don't want that. We got to avoid that. No, I think just to clarify, I don't think we need zero manufacturing in the United States, but of all the things we could talk about on this topic, I think that it is true that the part that makes these tariffs seem so senseless to me is when the advertising around it, or what Trump is saying, is that he wants to bring manufacturing jobs back to the United States. And I have to say, I do not see it. We do have manufacturing in this country, but we manufacture really high dollar stuff because we're a rich country and our people don't want to work for sweatshop labor. And I, honest to God, cannot get my head around an idea why we would want to run tariffs against Vietnam in hopes that Nike would build their sneaker factories in the United States rather than Vietnam. Like I don't get that. So if you've got a line of reasoning, I'm willing to hear it, but I don't see a problem with manufacturing being done by others. The reason that we pay tariffs when we export goods to other countries and the reason we have trade imbalance is because we're a rich country and we consume a lot of stuff. We consume more than those other countries do. And so for them to tariff us, that's just part and parcel of it. I don't think it's unfair. I think it's just the way the world works. So that's my opening statement.
Well, and one thing I find really fascinating to dig into and think about is AI. And I think, what's interesting to me is when I think a lot of people, when AI came onto the scene and automation in general, I think there was this view that, what's going to get outsourced or what's going to get automated is the menial hands-on jobs, and the intellectual jobs is where everybody's going to be able to move to. But what's interesting about the evolution of the AI revolution is it's really taking away the intellectual jobs first. Those are the jobs that are most at stake in an AI driven environment because, it'll be able to do the work of a lawyer or be able to do the work of a lot of thought type, intellectually driven jobs, whereas there's a lot of hands-on activity that it won't necessarily address. And I do think there is a place for hands-on work. I don't necessarily think building tennis shoes is it. I mean, it's a good point with Vietnam, but I don't think that a world where we continue to outsource more of manufacturing is necessarily a good thing for us. I think there's a lot of benefit that comes with manufacturing. Yeah, I think you got to pick your poison. I don't think we want to make t-shirts. I don't think that's how we're going to, get wages up. But I do think there's value in the manufacturing industry, and especially picking the right stuff.
Fair enough. And just so we're clear, I'm not trying to bash on manufacturing. And I recognize the degree to which manufacturing has been an important part of our economy. It's part of how we won World War II, and in the process, stepped to a level of global political and economic leadership that I would say that we're abandoning at this point. I'm not anti-manufacturing, but it's interesting parallel because I'm going to disagree a little bit with something you said on the AI front. What happened in manufacturing over the last, say, 40 years is first Japan beat us to the punch on the ability to build cars. That's where most people experience this kind of revelation, right? Is that in the 70s, the Japanese were cranking out cars that were 5 times more reliable than anything that came out of Detroit. And they were more fuel efficient, and it kind of blew people's minds. You used to make jokes about things made in Japan, and now it's like the Japanese stuff is pretty good. But what has happened is we have retained manufacturing in this country, but it's not sweatshops. It's less poorly regulated industrial industries that kill people on the job. We do make stuff. We make airplanes. We make automobiles. We make better automobiles now, trucks, maybe more than cars, better than we ever did. We make the chips that the whole world wants to run its AIs. We make things like aviation parts that right, like we're doing. Our manufacturing is not 100%, not exclusively, but we're skimming the cream off the manufacturing. In the world of manufacturing, if you get the choice to make something, I would say you would rather make airplanes than Nikes.
You brought up, if I could jump on that,
Yeah.
you brought up a good point about the Japanese cars and the credibility of those cars. And I think of very similarly with aerospace and China. Most people, Comac, Chinese manufacturer, makes a regional jet. most people today probably don't want to fly on a regional jet made in China. But I think, again, that kind of points to, if you don't protect the industry that we have, you don't put in some protections to that, eventually even those really good manufacturing industries are going to go the way of China and others, because you're not going to have and you talk about fairness, and I get, like, I think we had an expletive driven text string a couple of weeks ago, but you'd mentioned about, well, the world's not fair. And, it's not. But at the same time, if you've got people that put in unfair mechanisms to restrict trade that could lead to shedding more manufacturing work in the future, like, that's why I like about the reciprocal nature of this. Like, okay, drop your tariff, drop your barriers, we'll drop ours. But there's a reason that they have those barriers in place, because they work for them. So, I do think I agree with you. I think, we don't want to be doing sweatshops, and we don't, it's a great point on the Nike thing. But I don't think that manufacturing industry in the U.S. is something that, if we just lay bare to the world and let them put up all kinds of barriers on our stuff, and we basically piss away the manufacturing we do have, it's going to go away, and it's not going to come back. It's going to be a lot harder to come back.
Yeah, you're not completely wrong. I don't think this is a black and white issue.
Yeah.
I will say, I don't even want to go there, because the way that this has been handled, and the whipsaw on Wall Street, which was, many people think, designed to enrich people that insider traded. All the administration people sold before he announced this stuff and bought when it bounced up. But be that as it may, I wanted to extend that analogy that you made about AI. I kind of don't agree with you about it eliminating intellectual jobs. You're on the right track, but I thought about this a lot, because we're undergoing this directly in my organization, and thinking about where we're going to be in 5 years. The jobs that it's going to impact are those intellectual jobs, but I don't think it eliminates them. I think what it does, I think people have a choice. There's a fork in the road. If you're a knowledge worker in this country today, there's a fork in the road, and you're either going to say, well, I can do it better than the computer, and this is just a flash in the pan, and we should ignore that stuff. You can say that, and what they called that in the 18th century or 19th century was John Henry, who raced the steam drill to drill the tunnel, and he died in the process. You can take that fork and say, oh, it'll never replace me because I'm so brilliant. Or you can say, this is my opportunity in life to shed the part of my job that's tedious. And I think I'm good at what I do. And if I can, and you and I are both engaged in this right now, of taking our own work, like, I'm trying to eliminate part of my work so that the parts that I'm good at and the parts that are valuable and can't be moved to the computer, and can't's a big word, but you know what I mean? I'm trying to make sure that I'm doing what we've done with manufacturing. Like, let's send the sneakers to Vietnam. Let's build the NVIDIA chips. That's my approach to my career and what I advise my colleagues now. AI is going to change a lot of what we do. I got to make sure that I'm working in the 20% of my job that's irreplaceable, so that the 80% will turn that over to ChatGPT.
It does bring up a whole other, and I agree with you on that for sure. And I consider myself, I mean, I'm not doing as much as I'd like to, but I'm a very willing adopter and participant, and I use it every day of the world now, because I feel like it increases my productivity. But it does make me wonder, though, like, when I first came into the workforce out of college, the Air Force, and I was at a base up in Iceland, was my first assignment. And, we had a computer that, like, people would use for various purposes, like, but nobody used it. Like, everything was, like I'm 22 years old and a lieutenant. And I have a secretary, and I'm like, I write something and like, hey, can you type this? Like, I mean, that world, is that unrecognizable to us today. But, the promise of the computer was, oh, we're going to get so much more work done. I don't know if we got any more work done. I mean, we're trading emails all day, but
Right.
like before we had email, I mean, we got crap done. I mean, stuff happened, like I almost do wonder, like, where does that time go? Like, that we supposedly saved.
My civilization invented technology that eliminated 80% of the work that I and my friends did, and all I got was this lousy t-shirt.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. And it does kind of get plowed back in, and it doesn't seem like we yield a lot of that. It is interesting because I think we're seeing that cycle repeat. We've seen this back the Industrial Revolution, and in England and Lowell, Massachusetts, we're weaving cloth. Well, then that gets pretty mechanized. Now we don't need people to do that. Now we took all these people that used to make cloth in their home. They don't need to do it anymore. Look at what we saved, but they don't have a means of income anymore. And so there's these kind of technological shifts. I don't think that I'm like, this isn't a shocking prediction, but especially in the last 9 months, I've gotten more engaged in what AI can do. And I really believe that this is going to be a bigger shift than the internet was for us.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's. I mean, yeah, I think it could be the most pivotal technology ever,
Yeah.
for sure.
That said, I also think because I mean, this my lived experience in the workforce was, as you say, computers. I remember as part of your I'm a couple of years older than you, and I was envious of you because I didn't own a computer till I was in graduate school. When you started in school, I think they issued you a 286
A
laptop.
Z248. Yes,
Ooh, boy.
you had to use a second floppy to start Word.
I mean, think about what that means. I now ask any question that I have about anything to my watch, and it's just mind-boggling. But I don't know that life is all that different. A lot of the peripherals have changed,
Yeah.
and so I don't know. I think it remains to be seen. But all of this in the context of what do you do about manufacturing? Do you are you- I mean, this is kind of a thought experiment question and not a trap, but like, what if we could repatriate 20 million manufacturing jobs in this country and shift that back into our economy in a world where you're trying to get everybody ready to operate in an AI? Did you just take
Well,
those 20
I
million
but I
people and
I think the other piece, and this sounds, it probably sounds a little elitist, like we're sitting here moving pieces on a game board of millions of lives,
right?
but I mean, how to say this without sounding negative, but like there's a lot of people in a lot of low paying jobs today that probably aren't going to be candidates for the AI world.
Yeah.
But a good paying manufacturing job is probably a step up from some of the low paying services jobs they have also. I look at company I work in, we've hired people for a manufacturing facility. It's complex manufacturing in a rural area in the Midwest, and they actually, it's interesting because the guys at our shop, because it does maintenance or repair as well as manufacturing. But one of the things they say is like they don't want to get somebody that comes from like another manufacturer or another repair shop, because a lot of times people come in with like habits that you then have to
Mm.
break. They'd rather bring somebody in, like they meet somebody at McDonald's and they got really good customer service, and they'll bring them in and train them, because if they can train them fresh, they can teach them the way that it should be done and be much more consistent. But
Mm.
we've hired, just on this one program, we've hired 30 people, and I think about those are 30 people that live in a rural area. It's like you drive through a lot of the flyover states And, you've lived in a lot of those places and you look around and you're like, well, where the hell are you working? I mean, there's not,
Hmm.
other than the Ponderosa down the street, like where else are you going to get a job? And these people are getting jobs in a place that they can build a career and they can, learn a lot of things. And, um, I think there's a lot of value in that. And I think sometimes when we start talking about, well, people need to get intellectual jobs and AI jobs. Yeah, I think there will be a lot of jobs there, but I do think there's whole segments of the population that are in different places, and a good, consistent industrial job is good for sure in those areas.
Uh, Again, you won't get an argument from me that it's a good thing, and I don't
Yeah,
begrudge
no, and
those
I'm
people
I'm
or
not.
anything.
I don't want to imply that.
No, but just like I think we need to think carefully about what we target in our economy. Yeah, a robust mix of jobs for people. 100% agree with that. No argument whatsoever. But I do think that, like, I guess I don't I don't see a strategy there, and I think this goes to the whole kind of the economic shift thing. I mean, I'm going to ask you seriously about this. I've talked to you a lot about politics. We've argued. We literally tried to unravel and figure out the invasion of Iraq. 6 hour drive from Boise, Idaho, one time, and we did not fix it. But like we've talked about a lot of things. You got a lot of things on your mind. I think I know stuff that you think is important. I find it interesting that I don't recall 3 years ago you saying the problem with the Biden administration is that he's not putting enough tariffs out there. And again, I don't mean that to sound like an asshole, but like who other than Donald Trump himself, and I think I sent you the Wall Street Journal article that kind of looked at, things that he'd said back in the 80s about this, and it's kind of the same story. Who's banging the drum for this? Again, not whether should we be thoughtful about making sure we protect some manufacturing sector in the country, stipulated, but who's saying, oh my gosh, put 100% tariff on everybody. Let's see if we can just really just tank the hell out of the economy. I mean, who was begging for that before this happened? I don't.
Yeah, I mean, certainly. I mean, that's not something. It's not something that was. I don't think it was in Project 20. What was that? The Project
Project
2020.
2025.
Yeah, it wasn't in there. I don't think, was it?
No, I
And
don't think
hey, he
so.
did it. I thought he was only going to do what was in that thing. But anyways,
No, he's going to do that, but
well, I think I think Trump's an American exceptionalist, and I'm sure his views have migrated over the years, but he's definitely not a globalist. He's an exceptionalist. He's his whole concept of America first, which he ran on, in this, I think, fits with that in general. I think his view is that we need to negotiate as good a deals as possible for the U.S. And I think where he's going on these tariffs is, an enormous disruption, of course, but he is a disruptor. And I think he's trying to disrupt the rules of trade nation by nation, and he's doing it all at once. And I don't think I think there is a lot of strategy to it. I know you'll disagree with me heartily, and that's fine.
mm-hmm.
But I think I think one of the things that is different about Trump is he's willing to kind of go with an all in and a crude solution versus, you could do this same, you could negotiate trade deals with every country through the World Trade Organization and, years of back and forth. I think his style, this is very unique to his style of kind of a brash move. But I think in the long run, I think there's value there. I mean, I guess the value I see at a broad level is I think I think it's a reshaping of the economy to make it healthier. And what I mean by that is I think we've had a administration over the last 4 years that has spent heavily in deficit spending. I think that's overly inflated the economy. I think the stock market was inflated because of trillions of dollars in deficit spending. I kind of view what Trump's doing in the tariffs as a bit of, deflating the speculative overvaluation and at the same time using tariffs as a means to negotiate a better, a better overall structure for the United States. And I think in return, I think over time we're going to have a better economy. Now, I could be completely drinking the Kool-Aid here, and it could all go to hell in a handbasket. But I think there's more strategy here than you would ever agree to, and that's fine. I mean, that certainly makes sense. But
like a lot of times,
I think there's a lot of disruption,
right.
but I think there's goodness behind it.
Yeah. Well, like a lot of things, I hope you're right that this leads to the kind of outcome that you describe. I find it really, really hard to imagine that that'll be the case. I know that I'm looking at a short-term view of things, and you talk about in the long run. And I got to tell you, part of me thinks about, you know, what is the long run and what is the short run? And I'm in my late 50s. And what I see is what I would say an unnecessarily disruptive approach. Even like I don't think it's a problem. I think he's fixing a problem that doesn't exist.
You don't think the stock market was inflated and it was due for a correction? You don't think a correction?
Yeah, I do. I do. Well, or yeah, I think it was overinflated, but I don't think that necessarily cries for the worst drop in the history. There are ways for stock markets to grow less slowly and for bubbles to kind of work their way out. So I don't agree with the objective, and the method is disruptive for disruption's sake. I believe that Donald Trump really, really gets his kicks of thinking that he can send a tweet and move the stock market $1,000. And I think he is driven more than anything else by his own ego and petulance. And I think he gets his kicks moving the stock market, regardless of what it does to people who are trying to plan retirements. And because of that, I'm worried about my own. I haven't looked. I lost a big chunk of my wealth. I probably changed the number of years I need to work. If things don't change, if this dip sets in, it probably means that I got to work 2 years longer than
okay. But if there was a correction anyways in the future, I mean, even later than now, wouldn't that be even worse?
There's a long history of stock market corrections that were somewhat like less than 25% in 3 months.
I mean, I guess my point is you still have the same number of shares that you had before. Sure, they're worth less, but over the next 3 years, I mean, to me, a dip is a positive. Where we are in our career, there's an opportunity to increase greatly because now we're going to be buying things at a bargain. I mean, you're not going to, okay, you're going to retire, but you're not going to take all your money up front. I mean,
but the other side of that equation. So fair enough. Whether the market was overinflated, whether it was overinflated because of Joe Biden, if you want to look at spending, look at the first Trump administration. You cannot accuse the Biden. No, it doesn't compare.
The Biden deficit was enormous after he took over in 2020. It was
net
a huge
10-year debt approved under the Trump first administration, $8.4 trillion. Under the Biden administration, $4.3 trillion.
What was total deficit spending?
What we're going to find is we're going to find multiple ways to caveat and asterisk this, and you're going to find sources that say Biden overspent, and I'm going to tell you that Trump spent like a drunken sailor. And probably both are true, but to say this is a Biden problem more than a Trump problem is, look, and you know that I have agreed with you that we spend too much money and that I'm in favor of cutting the budget and dialing back federal spending. In that case, it's about a methodology. The other thing I worry about, though, is that these tariffs, even if they stay in a limited form, what this did for you and me and for every other American is raise our taxes by 25 or 50%. It raised our taxes. These countries do not pay that money. We pay the money. And we pay it.
That's not necessarily true.
How is it not true?
I mean, Trump's tariffs in the first administration did not translate one for one into an increase. A lot of that increase is borne by the exporters themselves.
But where do the exporters get the money?
They make less when they sell the product.
I just, I mean, if you don't think foreign cars are going to go up, if you don't think your iPhone is
Yeah,
going to go
okay,
up,
foreign
you're
cars go
smoking
up.
crack.
Don't buy a foreign car.
Well, you know how many,
Nobody's holding a
you know how
gun
many
at your head to buy the
sedans,
Mercedes.
you know how many sedans are manufactured by the big three in this country? That'd be a good study all its own. I'll buy you pickup trucks and gas hog SUVs all day. You want to buy a sedan? You're going to buy a German car or a Japanese, but I probably a German car.
Well, you're also assuming that whatever the tariff is today is going to remain in perpetuity. I mean, Japan and South Korea are among the countries that are sending delegations over to negotiate. Guarantee you there'll be a deal. So I think there's a lot of value in this, but I feel like it's not an area we're going to agree. I guess I am interested though in digging into. We talked a little bit about the beginning. I mean, the history of globalism versus exceptionalism, it's a murky history. I mean, there's both sides have people like tariffs, people don't like tariffs. I feel like, Trump's obviously an extreme, but both sides have certainly dealt in
totally. I want to
globalism
pick
versus
apart the
exceptionalism.
term though, because, and I know what you're trying to say, so I don't want to side rail the conversation around that. But I want to be the first to say that as I define it, asterisk, I am an American exceptionalist. I believe that the United States of America is an exceptional example in the history of humanity from 1776 to this day. We are a city on the hill and a beacon to the world, but it is not because we had steel plants. American exceptionalism, in my mind, is entirely a function of the values, the commitment to human rights, the commitment to fairness, the commitment to freedom. That's what makes the United States, and we're not the only one that has that, right? That's the other thing. There's a great clip that I'll send you of Jeff Daniels from a TV
I've
show
seen it.
that
Yeah, I've seen
you
it.
know the one. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
We're not the only ones, but we were the cradle of that kind of Republican democracy that has meant everything to this world. So yeah, I think Americans exceptional, but Americans not exceptional because of some of the crap that we got. We're not exceptional because we happen to have natural resources that were more useful in the 1800s and now we don't have nickel. We're not exceptional because of that shit. We're exceptional because of our Constitution, because of our Bill of Rights, because of the commitment to things that I hold dear. And so I'm on my soapbox. I'll step aside. I don't want to lose the distinction that you're making, but I chafe at the idea that exceptionalism is actually that it's even opposite to globalism. I'm very much a globalist in terms of economics, but I do think American is exceptional.
Well, but I guess I'm thinking about it in terms of economics.
I understand.
And when I say exceptionalism, it's not necessarily that America's good or bad. It's just that we're putting our interests first before the global community.
Yeah.
I think I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what you might say is the reason we're exceptional is because we put the needs of the globe before our own. But that's certainly not where Trump is going and what he ran.
I don't think that, well, you're 100% right with that. I don't think you need to put the needs of the globe ahead of yourself. I think you need to recognize the interest that we have in a healthy globe, which is a shade of meaning on that. You and I have talked about this a lot with national health care and socialized medicine. And my point to that always is that it is in my self-interest for my neighbor to have health insurance, right?
Yeah.
It is in my personal self-interest for the people down the street to have access to preventative care so they're not crowding the emergency room when I have a heart attack. And I see globalization as essentially that. how do we not win in a global world? We have a strong manufacturing base at the top end. We have an educated workforce. We have a buying power that the rest of the world is dying to get at. And so, yeah, the more global trade, the better we are. With some exceptions, I don't want to be an absolutist about that.
Well, and I don't disagree. But I also think that we've got, because of exactly what you said, the buying power that we have more leverage than many politicians have exerted before. And I think that's kind of where Trump's going with this, is he's exerting a leverage, and he's doing it in a very brash, disruptive way. But I do think Scott Bessent is a wealth of knowledge on the subject, and he made a good point in that, like, in a trade war, the one with the deficit, the one at the short end of the stick, has the leverage in a trade war. I mean, if you've got the surplus, it's not, all you're going to do is lose. You're not going to, you're not going to win. You're not going to create a bigger balance. So I do think we do have leverage.
But even if I take that for a fact, I'm interrupting you here, but even if you take that for a fact, the thing is that the part of the world that we're buying, because of that shift of us to higher order things, it hits the everyday consumer at a much higher. Again, when you're talking about in the 1970s, you're talking about, like, who builds cars and where do we make steel and where does steel get shipped? Ultimately, that all tracks to the consumer. But there's a huge market of direct buy of consumers from China, Temu and Alibaba and all of that
Sure.
kind of stuff. And again, I guess I just would say, I think the whole idea is stupid. But even if you thought the whole idea was good, the disruptive approach, the methodology that we've chosen is going to lay this disproportionately on the back of the consumer. And it's going to lay that particularly on the back of the lower income consumer. People are going to hurt from this.
Yeah, but again, though, I think we're back to that assumes all these tariffs stay in place. That assumes they don't negotiate deals. He put a hold on everywhere in the country, everywhere in the world but China. Now, I agree. I mean, this back and forth with China, it's going to be, who backs down? What are the numbers are getting absurd. I mean, it's going to be like 400% tariffs back and forth. But I mean, it's a short-term plan. I mean, I don't think the desire is to have 150% tariff in perpetuity. But I don't think he's wrong in the sense that, like, China's like, oh, well, the Americans are being a bully on trade. Like, oh, okay. If that's not the pot calling the kettle black. I mean,
Sure.
Like, people are like, oh, we're for free trade. No, you're for your trade barriers and no trade barriers here. So it's like, all these countries are totally disingenuous because they all love trade barriers. What the hell are you talking about? And it's just when we call their bluff, oh, you guys are bullies. You're trying to disrupt the world. It's like, no, we're just.
I just don't. I hear you. I just don't see us. I don't. I think it's apples and oranges. What we make versus what China makes. What comes over in those shipping containers to LA go back empty because they don't want our stuff. They don't need our stuff, and then they can't afford the stuff that we make really well.
They can't afford it is the main reason they're not bringing it back.
But I will say this, and zeroing in on China versus the whole world, I think is a good thing. I'm going to say this: you hit the nail on the head when you said this is a short term. I know what you meant, that you think that this is all just a negotiating thing and everything like that. I got to say, man, what I worry about with this, what I would call the shenanigans of this is only stealing China's resolve to bury us. And I think you're crazy long term not to bet on them if and I don't think some little tariffs here and there are going to be the fix for that.
Okay, but
the Chinese play the long game, man.
But let's pull on that. So we get rid of all of our manufacturing and we're 100% beholden to China. How is that good for national security?
Well, I'm not arguing for that. And I'm not saying that we should that we should outsource all of our manufacturing, but I'm fine outsourcing the sneakers and the t-shirts and the little gizmos that you get from Timo. I make a difference between
I
those
am
things.
fighting for fidget spinner production in the United States, Kent.
Well, it sort of sounds that way. I don't know. I think the naivete of Americans about China is a huge impediment to us right now. And
Well,
I
and
mean,
I agree 100%. And that's where I think I think this whole Russia fascination, Russia being the enemy and Russia this and Russia is like a broke, um, you know, fraction of what they were. Bunch of losers. I mean, they're just a bunch of drunk losers that have no relevancy. No, China's the one we got to worry about, not Russia.
yeah. Which, because we've had a little hiatus because we both have been busy, it means that we're already on the next crisis. We didn't get to unpack the fact that the nonsense of the signal message about the
Oh my God.
airstrikes. And I'm going to tell you, you may laugh at me. If you don't think somebody in Beijing has the key to hack into and read signal messages between the cabinet, you're smoking crack. I promise you that somebody in Beijing is reading that stuff.
Yeah, I wouldn't argue. That was an idiotic, unnecessary. I almost view it like friendly fire. Like we're getting killed by the enemy. Do we have to kill each other while we're at it? Like that. I almost liken it to that during the campaign. That guy, who I guess he's actually a funny comedian, but do you remember at the convention, some comedian, Republican convention, some comedian got up there and started telling like racist jokes and stuff. You know what I'm talking about? Like,
Yeah.
hey, could you try to make this worse, please?
Well, play into.
Oh no, it's the Puerto Rico thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Like play into, like serve up on a platter
Yeah.
the weaknesses and the stereotypes that your opponent is already hammering you on. Just double down on that.
Hey,
Well,
did you see the unlikely White House groupie this week, Gretchen Whitmer, hanging out at the White House with Trump while he was taking questions from reporters? She was there to agree with him on the tariff situation. I don't know if you saw that.
so that's
She's
interesting.
your
And that goes
front
to
runner for the Democratic presidential race.
she's my number two right now. You're right. And I think that insofar as this whole context is about shifting political alliances on that, it's a tough spot to be in if you're the governor of Michigan, right?
Heck yeah.
Because you're like, well, again, I think it's a flash in the pan. I don't think it's going to fix it, but right, like, yeah, your constituents are kind of like, well, yeah, we prefer to make. I don't think we make any cars. Does Ford even make an automobile? I mean, a sedan. I think they make the Mustang and maybe a Lincoln. Everything else is an SUV or a pickup truck now.
Yeah.
But no, you're right. It's kind of a strange bedfellows deal. My other
This is
front
not
runner.
good for me, Kent. This podcast.
take one down from your shelf and toss
right.
the empty in the trash.
Yeah.
My current favorite, I think he's kind of a long shot, but I love Rahm Emanuel, and he's making some noise about possibly running.
Do you
And
remember that? There's a story. I forget who reported it. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Like he yelled at, like he was pissed at some senator and went to like the gym and started cursing a guy out in the shower.
both of them naked as a J and Rahm Emanuel just in his face. I mean, insofar as you like the bellicose nature of Trump and fighting things, a debate between Rahm Emanuel and J.D. Vance would sell tickets, man.
Yeah.
He is, love him or hate him, but he is a relentless. I mean, he's a mean person.
Yeah.
But he made
Well,
a
he was
really
mayor of
good
Chicago. I mean, he survived as mayor of Chicago.
But he made a good point. I think he was talking to, I can't remember who it was. He was on news program, might have been with Jon Stewart, and kind of calling out the Democrats. Part of the reason that we have Trump, I'm the you know my feelings about Trump. Trump owes a great thank you to leadership of the Democratic Party, who squandered their leadership with working class Americans by not delivering for their constituency. And unless and until the Democratic Party reckons with that, we're going to keep losing elections. I don't know that that translates to a specific policy here. I don't think that long term we're doing people any favors by tariffs that don't bring them jobs, but that cost them 25% inflation. But nonetheless, the Democratic Party has shifted elite. Look at education statistics by party, and ignored or forgotten or kind of taken for granted working class white people in America. They've taken for granted African American voters, particularly male African American voters, and kind of turned their back on some of the historic constituencies of the party. And we've paid a terrible price for that.
Did you see this? Totally unrelated. Did you see this week Bill Maher talking about his? You know how he went and had dinner at the White House with Trump. Did you hear about that?
No, I heard, but I didn't see anything on it.
Yeah, I mean, it was really interesting. You ought to look for the article, read it. And Maher was like, it was so surreal because he's like, when I got done having dinner with him at the White House, I watched like TV or something, and he's on TV and ranting and yelling about something, and he's like, who is that guy? Like he said, when he had dinner with him, he was generous. Like, Maher was giving him crap about stuff, and he didn't fight back. Like it was like he's like an entirely different person in a personal level, which is really interesting to read his take on him. Well, I did look on AI. How many total shootings occurred in Chicago during Rahm Emanuel's tenure? But
there was a lot.
Estimates 25,000 over his tenure. So so you got that.
Yeah, I mean, the kind of macro trends or crime that is actually an interesting topic. Is the ebb and flow of crime statistics in cities? We've been in a real when we were kids, grew up near Detroit, near but not in Detroit, and damn seldom were in Detroit. Like it was a terrifying place. I think.
And what was so crazy about that? And I'm sorry to interrupt you, but like when we were kids, like growing up, it was like, oh, can we go to Detroit? No, it's I grew up thinking it was like 2 hours from the house. Like it was some huge distance. It was like 35 miles, but yeah.
Yeah. And I think honestly, look, our parents lived through an era. It was before you were born. Dad was in Vietnam and mom was living in Michigan when the riots happened in Detroit. They were rolling National Guard, and the 81st Airborne was rolling tanks down the streets of Detroit. That leaves an impression on people that's hard to shake. But the truth is that from the early 2000s to within maybe 5 years ago, the whole country was on this really significant decline of crime, particularly in urban areas. Like it got a lot better. And a lot of young people have moved into these gentrifying neighborhoods in cities. And now there are some trends of some of that crime coming back. I think that's bigger than any one. I'm not trying to make excuses for Rahm Emanuel, but I think it's bigger than one mayor administration. And it's kind of an interesting thing. Like, why is that happening? I would hypothesize that some of the civic unrest in big cities might be. We might ought to look at the same data that we look at to wonder why so many young males voted for Trump. I think that the kind of things that lead to the disaffection that results in crime are the kind of things that lead to people saying, you know what, the system's not working for me. Roll the hand grenade in.
Back to, it's kind of what we were talking about originally when we talked about manufacturing jobs. I mean, we're fortunate. We both have good paying jobs, intellectually, involved. But there's a lot of people that are living in places and working in dead end jobs, and they're looking for somebody who's going to help them get something better. So yeah, I certainly understand the frustration.
Agree. Well, I don't think we got it
I think
solved.
we've covered a lot, though. It's been great. Enjoyed
Yeah.
it. I mean,
And I think it
you know,
also, go ahead.
it's odd. Part of me, with Trump, there's so many headlines, and part of me is like, I really enjoy this time with you because part of me is like, but part of me dreads it because I'm like, oh gosh, what did Trump say now? Kent's going to be really pissed now. How am I going to deal with that? But
Well, I had a similar thought, honestly, in a different way. Like I get, I said to friends, this week was different for me. Most of the things that, and I think if you look back on the podcast, most of the things that outrage me the most are things that, in my perception, undercut that statement I made about what I see as American exceptionalism and our values. Again, I acknowledge that you don't necessarily see it that way, but the things that enrage me most are the things that I feel are assaults on the values that made our country great and makes our country great. This was different. I think that the politics of trade it cuts on a different axis in a way.
yeah.
And in this case, I don't think it's a moral problem. I think it's a tactical problem. And I think it's like I disagree with the strategy, but the tactics and the approach, I just think are chaotic for chaotic's sake. And what it made me think is I kind of am weary, and I was weary this way in the first administration, not just because I disagree with things, but because I think a lot of it is engineered to keep him on the above the fold on every paper every day. And that is exhausting to me. I wish I could get back to a time when I knew who the president of the United States was, but I was not assaulted by his name 50 times a day.
Well, the beauty of your position on this is that I think you've staked a position that is defendable in future debates. Because even if the economy comes around and it kicks ass, you'll be able to say, well, he could have done that a different way.
As always, you have a ludicrously optimistic view of Trump's abilities, but I hope that your wildest dreams come true and our country thrives.
Yeah, well, me too, because it was a scary week. I agree.
Hey, thanks for joining us on this episode of Bourbon and Rum Podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. Remember to subscribe on your favorite platform and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us keep the good spirits flowing.
And we invite you to join this conversation. Follow us on our Facebook page. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you want to hear.
And until next time, cheers.